Hi everyone, welcome back to I See Melanie, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite TV shows, probably one of your favorites too, called House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 1, A Son for a Son. So I'm really excited to get into it, and FYI, I have to use my phone today as my microphone because my Blue Yeti decided it doesn't want to work with my laptop anymore, so I'm really hoping that this audio quality doesn't sound like trash. Anyway, let's get into it. So instead of doing an episode recap, I'm going to talk about Team Green, then Team Black, and then the ending. Okay, so let's get into it. So first thing, Team Green, I'm going to talk about Alicent and everybody around her. Now, Alicent is a somewhat sympathetic character, but I don't really care for her too much. And we start off by seeing she's with Sir Criston Cole now, which is not a surprise. I saw the chemistry coming off of them since last season. And of course, I can go on a whole rant about Criston Cole, and I might do that later because he irritates me beyond measure. But yeah, so she and the knight are breaking his oath, and he's not really doing his job very well. And there's a scene where they both arrive to the council that Aegon's having, and you see her daddy, Otto Hightower. He knows something is going on. One thing I'll say about Alicent and her children is that these kids, they weren't raised properly. They weren't raised properly by Alicent. Viserys, nice guy, but I have to admit he was kind of lax in the fatherhood department too. And the grandfather, of course, we know that he's out for himself the entire time. So at the council where Aegon is there and he brought his toddler, of course, the toddler's going to be interruptive. And when the Lannister, I think he was like the treasurer or something, he was kind of fumbling with the kid because he was playing with that spear that they have on their the desk table. And then Aegon says, "Oh, is the prince interrupting you?" And of course, what can this Lannister say, right? Of course, Aegon is Aegon. Aegon is not a good kid. He's not a good person, and he never took the kingship seriously. From day one, Alicent always excused everything those boys did in last season, right? They always got away with murder. And, well, literally now. And yeah, of course, he's going to be acting the fool. But I must say, I was actually quite surprised that Aegon was so fair during the petition that the commoners were bringing forth towards the king. And of course, Granddaddy is there every time Aegon, would give an inch or give these laborers what they need. Granddad was like, you know what? We can't actually do this. And you see the look on his face where he's like, oh gosh, this grandson of mine, like, he is so irresponsible. And he is irresponsible. I'm not going to say he isn't, but obviously, the people really running the show are Alicent and her dad, and mostly her dad. And they have a little conversation later on, Alicent and Otto, where Alicent says, I can't have you like undermining me in the council because we know Aegon, he's going to be all about the kingship for a couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever. But then later on, he's going to get tired, and then we can really, puppeteer him and make him do what we want to do. And Otto's like, we have to make sure that we're on the same wavelength in terms of what we want to do. And in fairness to Alicent, she doesn't want complete bloodshed, a huge massacre and casualties in this war. But Otto's like, that's the cost of doing business. That's going to happen. So we can't be naive to it. We need to be prepared and do what we need to do to win this battle. Now I'm going to talk about another despicable character, Larys. Larys is pretty omniscient, right? For somebody who doesn't have any special mind reading capabilities, he knows what's going on all the time, and he's always there to mastermind something. And he clearly knows that Alicent and Sir Criston Cole have something going on because she's always indisposed when she really shouldn't be. And he he killed all her original handmaids or help, and he brought in new ones of his own who are trying to help her take a bath. And she's like, I got this. I got this. There are going to be flies on the wall feeding him whatever he needs to buoy himself up. Now, we see Larys talk to Aegon saying, your dad, when he was king, he used Otto Hightower as his hand. And no offense to your daddy, but he was kind of known to be a pushover, and Otto was really running the show, and you don't want to be seen as pliable as your dad, so maybe I should be your hand. We'll see how that goes. Or maybe he was thinking, I can have a hand in choosing who your hand is. I'm not quite sure at this point, but I guess we'll see how that goes. But he's got his tentacles in. He's got his tentacles in all the time. And I blame Alicent because she brought them into their lives, and he just upended. He's ruined a lot of things. Now let's talk about Aemond. Now, Aemond is also another one of Alicent's children who I can't stand, but he is a bit more serious of a person than Aegon is, obviously. And I just watched last season's finale on Sunday morning before the show came out. And during that dragon battle with his nephew, I do not believe he meant to kill Luke. But obviously, his dragon is 100 times bigger than Luke's dragon. And if you're engaging in an activity like that, in an effort to antagonize him, there's a very good chance that this little kid and this little dragon are going to die. So I wouldn't call it murder, but he definitely obviously played a huge role in his nephew's death. But I don't think he meant to actually kill him. But we see that he comes strolling up into the council meeting, and his mom's like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. But he said Aegon invited him. Or Aegon said that he invited him because it's his closest blood. And so he's strategizing there too. Later on, and there's a scene where we see Criston and Aemond talking about how they can strategize in the war efforts and so on and so forth. And Aemond is talking about his mom and granddad, and he calls them by their first names. He says Alicent and Otto. So we see that he doesn't have too much respect for them, right? And you can't be disrespecting anybody in front of Criston Cole because he might kill you, or he might, throw your head on the table or something because he has serious anger problems. And then Criston is still hung up on Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra has birthed 6 children since she and Criston were together, and he is still calling her a cunning spider who brought in Alicent into her web and stuff like this. Like, are you serious? Like, still? Anyway, I can't stand Criston. So let's talk about Halaena. So Halaena has been the only child that I actually saw Alicent have some degree of compassion and like motherly conversation with. And we know that she, we could argue that she has some mental health issues. She's a bit of a clairvoyant. I don't know if that word is even PC these days, but she's got issues, right? And at the beginning, she was talking about the rats. And this is just another one of the ramblings that we hear from her, and we don't really think much of it. But it really comes home to roost at the end. And I will talk about that later because right now I'm going to jump to Team Black. Okay, so obviously Rhaenyra, and excuse me, I'm going to try not to mix up the names because there's Rhaenyra, there's Rhaenys, and there's Rhaena, and so sometimes I get mixed up, but anyway. So obviously Rhaenyra is very distraught. Her son just died, and in the last episode from last season, she had 2 children die in one episode. So she's not in the best of places, obviously. And we see Rhaenys come in the dragon, and then you've got Daemon over here telling her, okay, well, get that thing up again because you and I are about to go and, start part of the battle. And she said, well, Rhaenyra, she's not commanding me to do this. Let's just wait on Rhaenyra's word. And Daemon says, well, she's missing, blah, blah, blah. And she reminded him, you know what? when my daughter, your wife, died, I needed time to grieve. We need to plan. Let's just cool our jets for a little bit and we'll go later on. And then Daemon's like, well, I command you. Or he kind of gives her an order. And she's like, you're not the king. And it's so funny. I saw someone on Twitter mention, like, they're cousins, right? So I'm sure, and she's the older one, I'm sure that she's just thinking, you know what, kid, just shut up. Like, I'm not going to pay you any attention. Like, I still love you to a deep level, but like, I don't need to pay you any attention right now. You need to calm yourself down. And we'll get more into Daemon, obviously. Rhaenyra, we see she's grieving, and Emma Darcy, they play Rhaenyra so well. The expression on their face when Rhaenyra is grieving, it just made me want to cry, right? The acting, of course, the acting on this show is impeccable. Rhaenyra doesn't actually say very much in this episode because she's clearly, again, she was gone looking for the remnants of the dragon and any, artifacts belonging to Luke, and then coming into the table. And so I think her only line in this episode was, I want Daemon Targaryen. And so we'll get back to that later. During Luke Harris's funeral service, we see almost everybody who we would expect to see, right? So obviously there's Rhaenyra and her two older sons. And like that little baby, like, well, he's not the baby because we've got the smaller ones that are Daemon's, but that little one is so cute and they look so sad. And then we see Daemon's daughters. I always forget Baela and Rhaena who's who, and I hope those girls get more shine this season because we barely know anything about them. And anyway, we see the one that was betrothed to Lucas, and of course Luke, and of course she's very upset. And we see Rhaenys and so on, but we don't see Daemon, right? Because Daemon can't handle his feelings the same way where he was kind of standoffish when Lena was giving birth, and he was kind of absent and he wasn't there to really hug his daughters or give his daughters any support back in season 1. And then he wasn't even here during the funeral service for his stepson. Daemon. Anyway, yeah, and even like the scenes with Rhaena and Jacaerys when they're talking about, when Jacaerys comes and he's talking about the logistics of what he discussed at Winterfell, and he's in between tears, and it's just really sad to see like how upset he was. Obviously, he's very upset. His little brother just died, and he and Rhaenyra have a big hug. So the second to last thing I'll say over on Team Black is we see Corlys meets the person who saved his life. So I feel as though that character is going to play a big role later on. Right now, I can't really say one way or the other how that's going to go, but that's nice. I'm glad to see Corlys back. I love Corlys, and I love Corlys and Rhaenys. So I'm glad that, they're back in the fold, and I think they're going to have a significant impact this year. Now, let's talk about Daemon. Daemon is a character who I oscillate back and forth with on like how I feel about him. And by the end of this episode, I don't feel too good, obviously. Okay. So yes, he's very haughty. He wants to find out, he already knows what happens, but he wants to really kick off the war. He wants to get Rhaenyra back to her rightful place and everything that's involved in that situation. Okay, now let's get to that big event at the end. Now, Daemon goes over to, I guess, King's Landing or the Red Keep. Sometimes I forget the names of the different palaces, but basically he goes to the place where the royal family is, where Alicent and her kids are. And he meets a man who also hates the Hightowers as much as he does. And I just had to rewatch it. So basically, White Worm told Daemon that there was this guy who knows the ins and outs of the Red Keep. And he wants this man to go and find Aemond Targaryen, to kill Aemond. Aemond, he has platinum hair, he has one eye, he's pretty good in a fight, so you need to, be swift and, do your thing. And the man says, okay, I'll try it. And Daemon says, listen, if you do this, I'll give you this bag of coins. And he said, okay, but what if I don't find him? And Daemon doesn't say anything. The scene kind of ends, but Daemon gives him a look. And knowing how Daemon is, knowing what he's like, he could have said the words of the title, a son for a son. Maybe he didn't care what son was taken. We don't know. That's up for interpretation, and I guess we'll see later on. So anyway, so this man, the two men, blood and cheese, apparently. I didn't read the source materials, but I saw everyone on Twitter talking about blood and cheese. They go through the castle, and at one point, they walk right past Aegon and his friends just sitting on the Iron Throne, like talking and kikiing, right? Because this kid is so unserious. Anyway, so they walk right past him and they're meandering through blah, blah, blah. And they get to a room where they see Halaena and the two little kids. One little kid who was at the council meeting when he really had no business being there, right? And he attempts to kill Halaena. But then the man says, no, he's looking for a son. He's looking for a boy. He doesn't care about these women because nobody really cares about the women in this show anyway, right? And then, so he asks, so which one is a boy? Because like these kids with the platinum hair, they're young, they look the same. And so she points to the son, and she was indeed correct. She wasn't pointing to the girl to kind of trip them up. And what happens. One thing I'll say that I do appreciate about House of the Dragon versus Game of Thrones is that, yes, the treachery and the violence is still there. But on House of the Dragon, I find it to be not so in your face. Because I definitely would not have liked to see this. I know what they're actors, it's not really happening, blah, blah, blah. But Blood and Cheese get this 3-year-old boy, and we hear them decapitating him, which is so terrible. And I felt so bad for Halaena because we know that she's not 100% there, and she's in utter shock, right? Because with her, there weren't really many options. She could have said, this is a kid, and they killed the one kid, or she could have put up a fight, and they all would have been wiped out, right? So what kind of a situation is that? And yeah, it's kind of crazy thinking that these rooms are so accessible to people because they really need to have more staff there. And who knows if that was Kristen's job or Kristen was supposed to be responsible for overseeing this job and he wasn't, because as we see later, when Halaena treks through the castle, she goes to her mother's room, who is enjoying some time with Kristen Cole. And she sits on the floor and she's in complete shock. And she says, they killed the boy, right? And I think in that stage, she probably didn't realize what was going on with her mom. And they can deal with that later. Like, who really cares about that right now? But that's how things end. And yeah, I'm really curious to see what picks up next week or on Sunday. Yeah, this was a great episode. It really started off with a bang, ended with 1-2, I guess, if you want to look at it like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I am Team Black. I am not Team Green. Team Black has some black sheep in it, like Daemon. So I guess we'll see how things go going forward, because I do not think that Rhaenyra would want her nephew, that's her nephew, to be killed. Like, this was a toddler. This wasn't a kid who did anything wrong. Yes, he was a little annoying during the council meeting, but who cares, right? He's a little kid. But yeah, that's a step too far. And if Daemon deliberately said, find any son, or he left it up to interpretation that could easily have been, just kill this little baby, then that is not good. Daemon needs to get himself in check. And it's so funny, kind of going on a bit of a tangent. Daemon and Aemond, There are so many similarities between them. First of all, their names are basically the same. Well, they sound a lot alike. And I think Aemond last season, was really trying to fashion himself after his uncle. For one, they have a lot of similarities. They are both the second sons. Aemond, I guess he had more of an inclination to be part of the kingdom. Well, I guess, Daemon did too, to an extent, but Aemond also kind of resembles Daemon, right? Like they're both pretty tall. They have the same half up, half down hairstyle. Aemond's is longer now, but Daemon's has been longer in the past. They kind of walk the same, So I think, yeah, Aemond and Daemon are very similar. Or Aemond wants to kind of be like his uncle, but his uncle has no time for him, which to an extent I can understand. But like this is taking it to an extreme, and yeah, so that's basically it. Let me know what you think about it. If you've read the books and you kind of know where the story's going, please don't leave any comments that, could provide any potential spoilers, because I have no idea. I've not read the books. I don't plan on reading the books. So if you have any comments about how you felt about this episode, just drop them in the comments area. And yeah, I'll be back next week because, again, this is one of my favorite shows and I'm really excited that it's back. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Okay, bye.